What's going on, everybody? Welcome into another episode of HBCU Huddle. I am CJ. Follow me on Twitter at ConRadicalness. Joined alongside, as always, by Mike. Mike, follow him on Twitter. My Mike Check. Mike, what's going on? Welcome back to the city, man.
Hey, thanks a lot, man. Everything's going on. Just hopped off the plane, got back from my hometown, D.C. Shout out to my brother for his wedding. Was blessed to be a part of that, man, and glad to go from one set of family to another set of family as we prepare for this NFL draft. By the way, real quick, shout out to that shirt, man. Black Wall Street.
Hey.
I mean, I'm telling you, you coming in making statements right there with that, man. That's big time, big time.
Got it from Africa in April. Africa in April was this weekend.
Yes.
And
yes.
so we decided to get out there and hang out. Saw the shirt and was like, hey, I got an extra couple of dollars. You know how they do it, 1 for $20 or 3 for $40. It's like, give me 3 of them things.
There
So,
you go.
Got a bunch of really cool shirts at Africa in April. If you never have been to Africa in April and you're around in the Memphis area, next year goes the official start, the unofficial official start of festival season in the city, and it is great.
Fantastic.
It is great.
Right in
I
our
love
backyard.
it.
Right in our backyard.
Right around the corner.
Yep.
Busy show today. NFL draft is going on. You brought that up. Who better to talk NFL draft with than cousin, family member of the show, Donal Ware. Donal Ware, curator of the Box to Row coaches and media poll. Donal was just at FAMU dropping off the Black College Football National Championship trophy, I think ahead of their spring game where they got their championship rings. He's been doing some great interviews. We'll talk to him about that as well. Donal, thank you so much for making time for us today, man.
Mike and CJ, I'm always going to make time for you guys. I appreciate being on the HBCU Huddle. Mike, I'm feeling you, man. I'm going back to Washington on Monday. Hopefully there's a vibe around the city with this second pick in the NFL draft.
Oh, no question about it. No question about it, man. They were already building up for it today. I was at the MGM on National Harbor. They're going to have a sort of a block party style welcome event, when they bring the number 2 pick. We all kind of know who it is, but they can still pull some shenanigans depending on how things play out. But at the end of the day, man, if it's who we expect it is, I know the city's going to show up. The DMV is going to show up for that number 2 pick and the rest of whoever they get in that draft.
It has been hard being a Commanders fan.
I don't even consider myself.
Post Doug Williams, man.
I'm still Skins, man. I'm still Skins. I take the derogatory red out. I'm just Skins. I go Skins. We'll see how long it take me to convert to Commander.
Donal,
No doubt.
was it this weekend you were at FAMU dropping off the trophy?
It was last weekend. It was a lot of fun. Look, Mike knows this. It is the toughest. It's got to be the toughest capital city and one of the toughest cities to get to. Had to go to. Can I tell the story a little bit? So,
please, that's why we have you.
Okay, great. So went to Jacksonville. Was great. Went to Jacksonville. Drove from Jacksonville to Tallahassee, which is about a 2.5-hour drive. I got in really, really early. Anyway, made the drive. It was fine. AD Sykes is there. Tiffany Sykes is the AD. She and I go back to our SID days going over 20 years ago. Gave the championship trophy. It was great. Another 2.5 hours back, leaving at 9:30, not getting back to Jacksonville till midnight for a 6:20 flight out back to Raleigh. Okay. To drive to Greensboro, which is about an hour drive, to call the A&T spring game, then to come back home. So that was rough, but it was worth it. They had a great time in Tallahassee.
Donal, you brought up AD Sykes. How do you think how fair has the criticism or unfair has the criticism been of how she handled that coaching search been to you?
Yeah, I think it's unfair. I understand the passion there. In Tallahassee and with the football program and all of that. I mean, I definitely get that. But I think, and this is not just because we go back. I think she's doing a really, really good job. She's got a lot of ideas. She's already implemented some of the really good things that are going on at Florida A&M. By the way, like these rings had to be paid for. This is not necessarily in the budget. And she put forth a plan to have the rings paid for. One of those was reaching out to the alumni and having the alumni pay for the rings and then come up and be recognized. So let's say she reached out to an alum. The alum paid for the ring, came up with the player that got the specific ring.
Oh, wow.
She's doing some really good things there. So let's ease up on AD Sykes.
And that includes helping to steer and generate the revenue when they needed to try to pony up to keep the former coach before he left, right? I mean, they had to have a massive, quick turnaround in terms of some fundraising. So to give that kind of money, 6 figures in the last minute to try to save and keep, the coach there, Willie Simmons there. Now, Willie was going to end up probably moving on anyway. But the fact that they had the resources to do that speaks volumes to where she is in that seat and her influence there. So I think it's still going to be plenty of great things to come. But, Donald, obviously we know with this weekend, with these next couple days are all about the NFL draft. And, my thing is that the last 3 or 4 years, different entities and different agencies have gone above and beyond to try to spotlight and showcase black college talent as it relates to preparing them for the NFL. Give me your top three candidates that you see who could be draft worthy over these first couple of days of the NFL draft.
So I like Mikey Victor out of Alabama State, as you guys made reference to. Had a chance to talk with him. He's a corner out of Alabama State, long range. He even earlier in his career, he played some safety as well, so he may have some versatility in that respect. You know who's intriguing to me? Sunday out of Anderson, out of your alma mater, Mike, out of Grambling. Mm-hmm. I mean, he's put, he came in as a 200-pound guy going back to 2018, put on to where he's now at 245 pounds. As a matter of fact, he had an illness, dropped all the way, like maybe going back to 2019, dropped all the way back to 170 pounds and has built himself back up to 245 pounds. He's an edge rusher. I'm going to tell you a guy that I like also. There were only 2 HBCU players in the combine. At the combine. Yeah. Willie Drew. I like Willie Drew, the kid out of Virginia State. Correct. And let's think about let's think Joshua Williams a little bit. Let's think about some of the great things, tall in that manner. Some of the good things that Joshua Williams is doing. He's still growing with the Chiefs, but he's got 2 Super Bowls, and he's an integral part of that rotation in the defensive backfield. So those would be my top.
So when we, because this was a big issue in 2021, after the 2020 season, there was a spring season. There wasn't a fall season. 2020, there was a spring season for FCS, not a fall season. And a lot of FCS conferences, a lot of FCS schools didn't get the looks, particularly the MEAC and the SWAC, and that led to no players being drafted from the MEAC and SWAC. How do you think the NFL has done in, as Mike pointed out earlier, in finding ways to highlight those types of athletes, the athletes in the MEAC, SWAC, and around the HBCU sphere?
I got to be honest. I'm not a big fan of the NFL, but I respect the NFL, and I'm going to tell it like this. I think the NFL has done a much better job, especially when you talk about the last couple of years, when you talk about the HBCU combine, when you mentioned even Steve White highlighted what Davius Richard, the quarterback from North Carolina Central. He's only outside of my top 3, but I think he has an opportunity. I don't know about getting drafted, but an opportunity to perhaps make a team. But look, I think you have voices inside the NFL like Steve White that are able to make sure that our players from HBCUs are spotlighted. So I think the NFL is doing a better job. That said, the problem I've had over the years, let's go back to the early part of the 2000s when you had so many players, that were being drafted from HBCUs, from the league, to the point that you mentioned CJ Zero in 2021, and we may have had 4 the next year. And, the NFL tried to tout it as a great thing, and it really wasn't that great. If you look at the players that made rosters, if I go back 2 or 3 years ago, 40% of those guys were free agent guys that were on rosters at the beginning of the season. You mean those guys got drafted? Now, to me, when you get drafted, that's an opportunity for you to get some guaranteed money or guaranteed signing bonus money. Doesn't mean you can't get money if you're an undrafted guy. And yeah, you may have a bit of an opportunity to kind of pick your own spot, but you're guaranteed to get money when you get drafted. And so I think the league has done a better job, but I think it can do a little bit more to highlight our schools.
One of the to piggyback on what you just said, one of the great examples, or a couple of the great examples, are the Florida A&M duo, Isaiah Lamb and what's my other guy?
Majors.
Marquise Bell.
Marquise Bell, and those guys. Right. Giving them a shot in to make a roster, and now you're talking about front end guys. Like in Marquise's case, I mean, this guy is a starter. He's trending towards being a Pro Bowl type, guy in the defensive backfield. So coming off a great season with Dallas. I just think there still is a stigma that not necessarily against HBCUs, but also against FCAs, right? I mean FCS, because the small conference schools, those who cover that, put out a big article saying that there's been a drop off in FCS players getting big time looks in the NFL draft too. So it's kind of, I don't know how much the transfer portal contributes to that. I think it may help more than hurt, because especially if guys move around and then drop down a level, they still become great prospects. But it's just a lot of things going into this mix right now, and I don't see it being solidified. We still need 2 or 3 more years to see where this is going to land in terms of consistency, in terms of the spotlight on HBCU players. I mean, is that something that you can see as well?
Yeah, I mean, but again, I didn't have a chance to look at the numbers this time in terms of the guys that were on rosters. But if 40% of your guys that are in the league, okay, were free agent guys, I mean, come on, that means that they can play it. And to your point,
yeah,
Mike, that is because we're talking about it from the HBCU perspective, I like to look at it from that perspective. But you're right, it's really a small college thing, where there's a stigma overall against smaller college players. Now, like the league says, if you can play, we'll find you. That is so true, but they won't sign you. That's the you know what I mean?
Via draft. I got you.
Right.
That makes sense, man. Great. Hey, that's a great way to look at it from that standpoint. Are you also, and I'll follow up on this too, should we be concerned about the trend of once HBCU players show that they can do something, they're going to be recruited by bigger schools and then go to the NFL from that route, right? So, I mean, I think that can be somewhat of a threat to pilfering off HBCU talent, because now it becomes a proving ground. You have a breakout freshman season at South Carolina State, and you might even get an invite to go up to Clemson as a transfer portal guy, right? You know what I'm saying? And then we kind of lose that attachment to HBCUs as a pipeline to the NFL. Is that anywhere near a threat?
It's a problem. We've already seen it. We've seen guys, the freshman running back from South Carolina State who had a fantastic season. Even some guys, from the school that I call games for A&T. So that is an issue. But the other side of that is you're seeing a lot of FBS guys that are coming to the HBCUs as well. So I don't want to say it balances itself out per se, because it's like when you first come to that school, like the kid his name is escaping me, the running back from South Carolina State. But it's like you develop him, and Buddy Pugh and his staff develop him, and then all of a sudden he's like the biggest name we have in HBCU, and all of a sudden he's gone to the FBS ranks. Yeah. So it's a semi-balancing act. But again, you're going to get some of those guys that come from the FBS levels that play at HBCU.
Yeah, and it's happening across sports, right? We're going to talk about Angel Jackson here a little bit later on in the show, but she was at one of these power conferences. She was at USC, I do believe. It transfers to Jackson State, ends up getting drafted into the WNBA. Mm-hmm. So I think, to Donald's point, and I think your question is valid and is a good question, but I think it does work to balance itself out in a way, because if he's going from South Carolina State to Clemson, well, that means somebody at Clemson is probably transferring out. And what's to say they aren't going to go from Clemson? They might be a Florida kid, right?
Yeah.
What's to say they're not going to go from Clemson to FAMU or something like that?
Right,
so I think that's a good question, a valid concern. But the way that players are moving and the consistency with which they're moving, we're getting a lot of top-notch talent from that were 4 stars, 5 stars, transferring from. Andrew Body immediately comes to mind right now, quarterback at Alabama State. Started his career off at Auburn, ends up at Texas Southern, now at Alabama State, right? So I think it'll work to balance itself out. Donald, from an HBCU perspective, the NFL draft would be or will be a success if what happens? If 2 players get drafted. If somebody gets drafted in the first 4 rounds, if 3 players get drafted, what would make this draft a success to you from an HBCU perspective?
Yeah, I think that's a great question because even though all of that I said, it's a year by year thing, right? Like we've had some years. I mean, look, we haven't had we've had the talent. That's not my point, but it's been some years where the talent hasn't been as good as it's been in other years.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this year, there's some talent, but we've seen where has been some talent in better years. I think to your point, the Marquise Bell situation is right on point. Here's a kid that doesn't get drafted going back a couple of years ago. Now he's the starting hybrid guy, whether you want to call him a linebacker or safety or whatever, for the Dallas Cowboys. I think with the talent level that you have this year, because remember, just because you get invited to the combine, as you guys know, doesn't mean you are going to get drafted. We only had 2 guys invited to the combine, but we've had some guys, Mikey Victor, Sundiata Anderson, not necessarily invites, but did their thing at the East-West Shrine, and then also the Hula Bowl as well. I think if we had maybe 6 to 8 players drafted, I would feel much better about it, because you go from 0 to 4, then to whatever it was, 2. So if we can continue to climb, so I would feel at least we were on a better trajectory if we. I don't know if I'd feel good, and don't know if I would say it'd be successful, but I'd feel better if we were talking about 6 to 8 guys getting drafted. Again, reason being, if you've got 30 to 40%, and I'm going to go back to this, if you got 30 to 40%, your guys in the league that are HBCU guys that have been undrafted guys, not drafted, then it speaks volumes to why these guys aren't getting drafted.
And that's and you've harped on that really, really well. And I think we need to keep driving that home. And what my fear is that it becomes almost a stigma. We know the NFL is a bottom line business, right? So the stigma is that, all right, let's get our priority guys in the first 6, 7 rounds because we know we can get some gems in the HBCU ranks as undrafted free agents. It almost becomes its own recruiting strategy to sort of dumb down the value of an HBCU prospect instead of saying, hey, I want to invest draft capital in picking this player. So it's almost like a catch-22 when it comes to that, where I do have some level of optimism that this can get corrected is when I look at the Miami Dolphins and I see GM Chris Grier. When I look at Rand Carthon with the Titans and my guy Brad Holmes, we talked about him, with the Lions. Those are 3 places where they have black men in position, including an HBCU alum in Holmes with the Detroit Lions. That's not to say that they're going to tip the scales or anything, but we have a level of diversity there that could be sensitive to making sure we mine these HBCU and small college prospects that are there.
Just want everybody to be clear. I don't think any of us are saying, hey, you should go out there and grab these athletes because they went to HBCUs. We're not saying that. Right. We're not saying, hey, go out there, everybody just grab you an HBCU athlete. What we're saying is that on the football field, there are some HBCU athletes who are absolutely good enough to compete and play in the NFL. And what I think Holmes and the other 2 GMs that you mentioned,
Grier and Carthon,
what they can do and what other GMs can do if they follow suit is say, hey, I know where good football players are. They're in the SWAC. They're at Grambling. They're at Alabama A&M. They're at Tennessee State, right there, North Carolina A&T. That's where they are. Let's just go get them. Not because they're black, not because they went to a HBCU, but because they're damn good at football.
And just make sure you're not overlooking.
Yeah.
Just make sure you're not overlooking and you give those athletes a chance to play on somewhat of a level playing field to showcase their talents. The fact that you only had 2 HBCU players invited to the combine is a travesty to me because you're not even giving them the chance to go to the job fair, right? And show what the resume
That's what it is.
And that's where the issue is. That's where you got to get them into those kind of places, man. And I know, Donald, you've been doing work in that space for 20-plus years, man, and bringing exposure to all of these stories and shedding light on all of these athletes, man. So, we still got work ahead of us to continue to do, and I know that's going to be something you're prioritizing as well.
No doubt about it. If I have to write something every year about the lack of, but to your point, CJ, if it's 6 to 8, I mean, I may not be as harsh. If we get 6 to 8, I may not be as harsh this time around. You know what I mean? So.
Right. Listen, Donald, before we get you out of here, you were at A&T spring game. You were recently at FAMU. Is there a spring camp storyline or something you're keeping an eye on as we begin to rev up for football season 2024?
Yeah, I think you mentioned both of those schools. I mean, FAMU loses a lot, including Willie Sim. Like I mean, look, I think Coles is going to do a good job. Had a chance to really talk with him, and his staff is going to be really, really good. But that's a huge, huge loss. So I'm interested to see what's going to kind of happen there moving into the season. And then with A&T, look, I had a chance to see A&T, a lot of guys that are coming back that are some key guys. And, I look for the Aggies it's hard. It's easy to say, well, you can do nothing but go up when you win one football game. I got it. I'm not saying the Aggies are going to compete in the CAA either. The CAA is the real deal, but they're going to be exponentially better this year, I think. So, to the point, I'm looking to see what those two teams in particular are going to do this season.
All right, Donald.
There we go.
Thank you so much for joining us, man. We'll let you get back to your busy day. Love the background. We'll talk to you again real soon, Donald. Thank you for joining us.
Anytime. Appreciate you guys. Thanks for having me again.
All right. Take care, brother.
Thanks, Donald.
Yes, sir.
Donal Ware, Box to Row, poll curator, Box to Row radio show as well on Sirius XM radio. Give him a listen. Go back and watch, because I watched he posted a clip of the Sonny interview on Instagram. It's like, holy cow, Sonny looks small and sickly, and went back and listened to it, and it is great. Donal Ware is one of the best interviewers we have as it pertains to just interviews, sports interviews in general.
Yeah.
Period. Yeah. So definitely go give it a listen. Mike, I'll throw that question to you before we move on. Is there a spring storyline that you're interested in? So we had a whole spring storyline episode planned for you people, and then OJ had the nerve to die, and so we had to talk about OJ. But is there a spring storyline for you that stands out?
Yeah, just the coaching carousel, man. Yeah. How is Chinnisberry going to do at South Carolina State, taking over for a legend, right? Who replaced the legend?
Mm-hmm.
Willie Jeffries led way. Obviously the Buddy Pugh, but they've only had 2 coaches at South Carolina State over 30-something years, right? So that tells you the kind of legacy he's stepping into. So I would say that's a key. And also, I keep an eye on Jackson State, man. Like, I think, there's going to be pressure down there for this to be a breakthrough season for them. All of the decks are pretty much cleared, and, TC Taylor has to get it done. And it's 2 years in.
Yeah.
But, 7-4 isn't good enough there. I think he has to be in that SWAC championship game this year.
Especially now that FAMU is without Simmons.
Yep.
They're without their starting quarterback, who ended up Black Player of the Year, and they're without the head coach that brought them so much success.
Yeah,
and so now
it's a rebuild for FAMU.
It's a rebuild for FAMU. It's also the second stages of the rebuild for Jackson State, 2 years removed from the Deion Sanders, from the Coach Sanders era, the Coach Sanders departure. So now it feels like those two programs, which have been the cream of the crop in the SWAC East in particular, and the SWAC overall, seems like they're back on level footing. Like they're back being
it's
peers.
Up for grabs.
It's
is what you're saying. It's up for grabs
with those two.
Yeah,
I think we say this every year. One of us does. Like Alabama, it's got to be Alabama State's time.
Doesn't
it? You got Andrew. You got Andrew Body there.
Yeah.
You got Coach
Eddie
Robinson.
You've been knocking on the door.
You
know what I mean?
Close-ish.
Yeah.
So I like that, Mike. I would throw Tennessee State's offense in there. Remember, they had they hired Tyler Rule from North Dakota State. North Dakota State. Excuse me, which was one of the best offenses in all of the FCS.
Yes.
They went out and they got him, and then he ends up leaving a couple weeks after being hired. So now he's gone. They got Travis Partridge, who's now the offensive coordinator. He's coming from UT Martin, which, again, another really good offensive program at the FCS level.
Internal candidate, in league candidate, right? And that was the team that really kind of pushed your season sideways when you had a chance to go get that division, that conference title. So,
Last year, Martin was 7th nationally in total offense and led the conference in points per game.
Yep.
That TSU front, the on the defensive side in particular, they're going to be
back. Yeah, that's back.
All of them. I do believe all of them are back.
That's back. I mean, the defense is going to be set.
That's going to be nasty. You got the best defensive lineman in the country.
Yeah.
Arguably at the FCS level.
Yeah.
The best defensive player in the country on that side of the ball. You just need to be able to score enough points.
Ball control and score.
And so I'm curious to see in Draylon Ellis's third year at Tennessee State. This is his first spring, apparently. I didn't realize this. He transferred late one year, and so didn't get a spring practice. And then last year, he had some academic issues, so he wasn't able to. He had to sit out the spring. So this is his first spring practice. So and I can't let go of Draylon Ellis. I still think there's something there with him. Tennessee State's offense is middle of the pack FCS offense. Like, that's good enough with that defense, I think, for them to not just compete in their conference, but for us to be talking about them in the FCS playoffs.
Well, they came down the stretch with 3 games left with a shot to still win the conference. And then it kind of just cratered after that. They couldn't get over the hump. And that's what Eddie George's message is: finish. So I think that's going to be, again, one of those key storylines, too, coming out of the spring. And, I'm just looking forward to an exciting season coming up. And it starts with the MEAC SWAC Challenge, man, where you got Dawson Odoms and Norfolk State going to put up a shut-up season for him, going up against the defending HBCU national champs that just got their trophy from cousin Donal Ware in Florida A&M in Atlanta. So I'm looking forward to that too, man. That kicks it off in August, and then it's going to be, it's going to be a race to the SWAC championship game in December.
Absolutely, absolutely. Before we get to our Culture Maker segment, let's throw up the calendar again. We made corrections to the calendar this time, Mike.
I saw, man.
We got it right. HBCU Huddle off-season calendar. Look at that. So
you just skipped out of April, though, because this is the last one in April, so we can't make the April mistake anymore.
No, we can't.
Just kick April out. Yeah.
So we got May 8th, May 22nd, June 5th, July 10th, July 16th, which will be SWAC Media Day. July 31st, and then August 14th we'll come back and we'll be weekly after August 14th, because that's when the season. That's the week the season starts. Let's go to our Culture Maker segment, Mike. We talked about, she's been a culture maker before, and I try not to do this.
Okay.
But like Morgan Price, Fiskite, gymnast, she ended up clinching the 2024 USA Gymnastics Women's Collegiate National Championship all-around title way back on April the 12th. She's a sophomore. She competed in the floor exercises, the uneven bars, the balance beam, and the vault, and she came out on top with an overall score of 39.225. This is amazing. This is incredible for a program this young to have a national all-around champion. That's incredible, Mike.
And that's a national champion in an individual. And we know, obviously, LSU won the team event, right? But this young lady can compete among the best in the world at that, at the all-around competition. The Olympics are in her future, man. It's got to be, right? She's got to have, if she's that good, she's got to have a spot at least in some kind of level of the Olympic U.S. gymnastics team, man. And I'm putting a lot of pressure on her. She's only a sophomore. The program is only 3 or 4 years old. But at the end of the day, when you can say, hey, I'm an all-around champ nationally, not just in the small college ranks, nationally. And, that speaks volumes about the program that Fisk is starting up there. It speaks volume about her dedication to the craft. So shout out. I'm glad that she is. Anytime she does something like that, she can be a back-to-back culture maker. No problem whatsoever. No problem whatsoever.
For those of you who don't know about Morgan Price, when we announced Fisk. Well, not we didn't announce it.
Yeah,
Fisk
when announced their program.
They announced they were having a program. We talked about it. We were on
because
the audio.
She was incoming. She was she was a recruit then, right? Yeah. Go ahead.
She was. No, you got it. If you remember it, you got it, man. Whatever you want to say. She was a 5-star recruit. She had decommitted from Arkansas, which is where her sister was, if I remember correctly. This is so long ago, Mike. We were still in the other studio only doing audio. That's how long ago this was. So she had decommitted
2 years ago.
And came into Fisk. And there were some questions whenever something like that happens with, she kind of throwing away her future. How much development can she have? And I want to say that a special shout out to Coach Corinne Tarver, who, by the way, was the first black gymnast to win all around, I do believe, in 1989. That's the coach. That's the coach. And
who's developing her.
Who developed her and is keeping her on the path. And so she goes out there and does that really young program. This is incredible. Right? I was there for the start of Fisk soccer. Or I do believe the start, maybe the restart. I don't think Fisk had a soccer team before the 2000s. I was there for that. There was a lot of ass whoopings too, right? Like that's what happens when you're a new program. Because you don't have the infrastructure all the way built up yet. You don't have the same infrastructure as your peers in other programs who have been doing this for way longer.
Right.
So it's hard at the beginning, and then eventually one of these athletes come through, and boom, your program takes off if you're lucky.
Yeah.
And Fisk, it looks like, with Miss Price, is out there ready to gone right now.
Yes.
They got the athlete they needed in the first year of the program, which is incredible. I look forward to seeing the continued growth and development of Fisk gymnastics.
They did. You said they got the athlete to help the programs take off, and they got the coaching in place. My only concern was were they going to have access to the facilities and the training. And evidently that's something that's still a work in progress, but it's good enough right now to get them where they need to be. And speaking of, shout outs and program starters too, we would be remiss if we didn't also give a cap tip to Tennessee State starting HBCU's first hockey program.
Got the coach.
Yeah, they got the coach and they got the program getting started going into this next season right there. A lot of help from the Nashville Predators, and it's going to be a great program too. And Fisk to have the gymnastics program, Tennessee State to have this hockey program, man. We're elevating in different spaces right now as HBCUs in the HBCU community, and it's good to see.
Absolutely. It's good to see. Speaking of good to see, Angel Jackson out of Jackson State, two-time SWAC Defensive Player of the Year. I think two-time second-team All-SWAC of 2019, All-American. She was drafted 36 overall by the Las Vegas Aces, second HBCU player drafted the last 20 years, and I do believe just the 8th HBCU athlete drafted to the WNBA, joining the likes of Amisha Williams-Holiday out of Jackson State in 2022, Andrea Gardner out of Howard in 2002, Amba Congolo out of North Carolina Central in 2002, Jacqueline Winfield out of Southern in 2002, Karen Wilkins out of Howard in 1998, and Danique Graves, 1997, out of Howard as well. So this is big as well. Women doing big things. Women at the HBCUs doing big things, Mike.
Yeah, it is. And that program at Jackson State has been strong the last couple of years. They've been NCAA bound the last couple of years. She's anchored them up front with her defensive tenacity. And she's going to a championship squad. You're going to play with Asia Wilson, right? I mean, come on, y'all. You're going in with one of the premier WNBA programs right now, and she's going to have a chance to be a winner and continue that winning nature and culture there. So it's going to be interesting to see how a lot of these personalities in the WNBA ranks that came in through this draft, how they're going to fit. We talk a lot about, there's been a lot of talk about Caitlin Clark. There's been a lot of talk about Angel Reese and all of these other players that have come in this year, and Miss Jackson is one of those too. So I'm looking forward to seeing how she continues her development.
Absolutely. Everybody, thank you so much for hanging out with us on this episode. We will be back. Kyra, throw the graphic back up so I can remember. I think May the 8th. May the 8th. Yeah, May the 8th will be back, everybody. Here's the schedule. If you're watching, you can see it on the screen. If not, May the 8th will be back. Everybody enjoy the NFL draft. Enjoy the rest of your week as well. For Mike, I'm CJ. We'll talk to you guys later.